Welcome back. It is exactly 8:54 a.m. News and views right here on Salam Media, and we're now honing in on Jagersfontein, the disaster there. We understand that there's one person confirmed dead, four still missing, more than 50 homes destroyed, scores of people left displaced, cars overturned on their roofs, and hundreds of animals left for dead. This is the bleak image of Jagersfontein in the Free State after a mining dam wall collapsed and left a trail of utter destruction. To talk to us about the situation regarding a sustainable environment in South Africa is Mariette Liefferink, CEO of the Federation for a Sustainable Environment. A very good morning to you, Mariette. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners, and thank you for the opportunity.
Lovely to have you here. You know, if memory serves me correctly, and I'm sure you will know about this, many years ago, we had a similar disaster in one of the small mining towns. I think it might have been Orkney. Am I correct?
Yes, it was the Mary Spray disaster. At the time, the mining company was Harmony Gold, but there were two other disasters as well. The Saaiplaas disaster and the Bafokeng disaster. So this is the fourth tailing storage facility collapse in South Africa's history.
So, Mariette, we shouldn't be having this discussion today because we should not be having these type of disasters. We should have learned from the three previous disasters, and very especially in this day and age, the 21st century, where we've made massive strides as far as science and technology is concerned, and very especially since an inspection was carried out not too long ago at Jagersfontein, and where a report was forwarded to the powers that be to suggest that the wall needs to be fixed. It's in a very fragile situation, and nothing was done. Nothing was done by the mine owners, and I think we need to be holding government responsible as well. They furnished the report, but they didn't do a follow up, and now we sit with this major disaster on our hands.
Yes, I want also to perhaps discuss the relevancy of what has happened, because in 2019, when the Brumadinho tailing storage facility collapsed in Brazil, there was a call by the investors that held 1 trillion assets under their management for a global standard for the management of tailings. That is as a result of the tailing storage facilities, not only of the Brumadinho tailing storage facilities, but also other tailing storage facilities. We must remember tailing storage facilities have an inherent high risk or hazard attached to it, because it stores, or it in a tailing storage tailing storage deposit is housed hundreds of tons or volumes of sometimes toxic material, that is the residue or the waste from the extraction of metal. So when the score was made to the mining industry, the mining industry was requested to develop and to ascribe to the tailing storage facilities management and the tailings management. And I would like just to read or refer to some of the goals of the tailing storage facilities management. It says the ultimate goal is of zero harm to people and the environment, with zero tolerance for human fatality. It requires operators to take responsibility and prioritize the safety of tailings facilities through all phases of a facility's life cycle, including closure and post-closure. It also requires the disclosure of relevant information to support public accountability, and also to prepare an emergency response plan in the case of a tailing storage facility's collapse. So it would appear that in this case, the Jagersfontein development, that was now the successor in title to previous mining companies, including De Beers, did not comply with this global tailings standard on tailings management, although this standard is, of course, a voluntary standard, but I am aware that a number of mining companies in South Africa already ascribe to it, such as Sibanye, Stillwater and Goldfields.
So the mining company has now come out and suggested that they will take full responsibility for the disaster, and they will do everything that is required of them to rehouse the people and get the people started up. But um, it's kind of late in the day for them to be coming to the table now. They should have had all of these safety measures in place. We wouldn't and shouldn't be sitting with a disaster like this.
Yes, first of all, in terms of our environmental legislation, that is the National Environmental Management Act and the National Water Act, a wide pool of persons can be held responsible for pollution or ecological degradation or the failure in duty of care. And this pool of persons would include directors, both personally and collectively, as well as the company itself, operators, managers, and agents. Besides that, of course, the organs of state that had been mandated to safeguard the community and the environment had also failed. And here I want to refer not only to the Jagersfontein tailing storage facility. I also wish to refer here to the general management of our tailing storage facilities. We often find that there is a systemic non-enforcement of non-compliance by the Department of Water and Sanitation and also by the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy. If I may just refer, for example, to one of these regulations, it's in terms of the National Water Act. It states here that every person in control of a mine or activity must cause any impoundment or dam containing any poisonous, toxic, or injurious substance to be effectively fenced off so as to restrict access thereto, and must erect warning notice boards at prominent locations so as to warn persons of the hazardous contents thereof. There is often no access control to these tailing storage facilities. There's often no warning signs, and communities are ill-informed as to the hazards and the risks attached to these tailing storage facilities. So, tailing storage facilities, for example, in the Goldfields, there are 270 of these tailing storage facilities, and it houses approximately 6 billion tons of
Oh,
hazardous material, often containing metals in toxic concentrations, including uranium and its radioactive progeny.
so Mariette, is it good enough that the owners of the dam or the mines and the property in and around Jagersfontein are taking responsibility? Let's look at the long-term effects, because we are aware of the fact that there's a lot of toxic elements in the dam. We know scores of animals have died, and for a long, long time, for years to come, that area will be totally uninhabitable because of all the toxins that have seeped into the ground now. They have taken responsibility, and they are talking about relocating the people, resettling them as close to the Jagersfontein town as possible so that they don't feel totally displaced. But the long-term effects will never be known immediately. It's going to be possibly in 10, 20, 30 years' time, those impacts will start manifesting in the area around them and in the people and their health and well-being as well. So what is your organization doing to hold them accountable for 50 or 100 years perhaps from now?
First, I just want to perhaps clarify, according to the mine itself, the Jagersfontein development, it is alleged that the tailings and the water is not toxic. However, we cannot agree with that unless there has been a risk assessment conducted, and an assessment that is a scientific assessment, in order to substantiate the allegations that have been made. the law always states that there must be a precautionary measure taken or a risk-averse measure taken. So we at the moment are not we have not been provided with the scientific evidence that the water and the tailings or the mud are not toxic. So first of all, and then secondly, in terms of the axiom of our laws, that is the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the Bill of Rights, it states that every person has a right to an environment that is not harmful to health and well-being. So besides the health implications, it's also an implication on the well-being, the comfort of those people, because it must have been an extremely traumatic experience. There's also, of course, the economic aspect to that, because it caused economic damage, losses of property, losses of animals and cattle. And then with regards to our organization, we are currently in a process of establishing a legal precedent in a similar case with the Mintails group of companies, where we have called upon the court to hold directors of the Mintails group of companies responsible for the dereliction of duty, for the failure in duty of care. And we've also called on the court to order the relevant organs of state, such as the Department of Water and Sanitation, Department of Mineral Resources and Energy, to also enforce the non-compliance of the mining company. So if this court case has a successful outcome, it would establish, of course, a positive precedent in which we can then also look at perhaps also instituting criminal charges against the directors, as well as the company, its managers and its operators, that is of the Jagersfontein development. May I just here interpose as well? It's of course not always just the current operators that is the successors in title. If predecessors had failed in their duty of care or had caused pollution and environmental degradation, predecessors can also be held responsible and also can be held liable in terms of Section 28 of our National Environmental Management Act, which makes provision for the retrospective application of the polluter pays principle. I also, if I have time, may just mention that what we often find is that mining companies, when they are reaching the end of their life of mine, when most of the resources have been depleted, and when there is increasing environmental liabilities, in order to escape their closure obligations, they often sell to smaller companies, and these smaller companies often do not have the skill and the financial resources to manage the impacts of a tailing storage facility, and that often results also in smaller companies going into liquidation. And of course, when a mining company is in liquidation, then often these tailing storage facilities are abandoned, and the costs and the impacts are then carried by the state or by communities or by financially beleaguered municipalities.
So a very huge impact, not only as far as the business models are concerned, and the smaller companies that buy off from the likes of De Beer, etc., but for the communities as a whole, and not forgetting, this is where you come in, the environment, a sustainable environment. But unfortunately, that's all we have time for. This is indeed a very serious and it's a very serious and important story, and a developing story at that. So we will be in contact with you in the future as well, just for you to give us an update on where we're at as far as the community and the environment is concerned. So Mariette Liefferink, thank you indeed for your time this morning. Go well.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
The time is exactly 8:09. Time for us to hook up with our news correspondent for the news bulletin of the day. And that, of course, is you, Zaid Jadwat. We'll connect with you in literally a minute. Thank you for standing by.